Do we have that clip of Kirby on CBS Face the Nation? So like I say, there's been protests in this country around the globe. Iran has struck back in northern Iraq and Syria. The Houthis have sent a missile on a U.S. maritime ship, civilian ship. Didn't do much damage, apparently. But this is not, there's no, it's impossible at this point to even pretend that Biden's unfettered support for Israel is in the best interest of U.S. national security. Never mind the, I don't even have to talk about the sort of like the how morally reprehensible this is and how unjust and how ridiculous. There's an ex-Shin Bet head. I think we've mentioned this guy in the past. Amy Ayala, who says that this entire assault on Gaza is a waste. It's one thing to go in and try and decapitate the Hamas leadership, but what they're doing to civilians is a complete failure. He says, we Israelis will have security only when they, Palestinians, will have hope. That's the equation. To say the same in military language, you cannot deter anyone, a person or a group, if he believes he has nothing left to lose. He believes in releasing Marwan Bugatti. I've brought him up in the past. Bugatti has been in jail since 2002, following, I think it was the second Intifada. And he is the most popular Palestinian figure there, one who would beat both Abbas and Haniya, the Hamas leader, in an election. The Israelis, of course, want to put this guy in jail because they don't want a cohesive Palestinian political force. They don't want there to be a cohesive partner to negotiate with, because that undermines Israel's ability to dictate the terms. But it's the only way in which this is going to end, and people are going to get any type of security on either side. Here is John Kirby. With all of this said, and pressure mounting in the Senate, you remember Bernie Sanders introduced that 502B resolution from the Foreign Services Act, I think it is, the Foreign Affairs Act, that basically says if we're giving money to a foreign country, we need to get a report from the administration on how that money's being used, if it's being used in accordance with international law. And the administration does not want to have to engage in that, because then they'd have to admit that Israel is, at the very least, on a daily basis, engaged in war crimes. It is a war crime to starve a population. It is a war crime to prevent humanitarian aid to get in there. It is a war crime to do collective punishment. It is a war crime to target civilians in the way they have. And regardless if the minimum of 24,000 civilians that have been killed constitutes genocide in someone's mind, regardless if you think that there's been sufficient evidence of a desire to perform ethnic cleansing, whether it's, Israeli soldiers chanting our job is to cleanse, is to basically deport all of these people and drive them out of Gaza, or whether it's, finance ministers in the Israeli government or other high-placed officials. There have been war crimes here, without a doubt. Multiple war crimes. And the U.S. government is not interested in having to produce that document. So here is John Kirby. I can't even watch this guy half the time, honestly. I just find him so
sleazy.
He is on with Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation. And we're seeing reporting of this, I think it was in Axios, that the U.S. is getting increasingly frustrated privately. I'll read that story in a bit, but here's Kirby.
As we acknowledged here, it's been 100 days since that Hamas attack on Israel that sparked where we are now. Does the U.S. need to press Israel harder to move into the low-intensity conflict they say they intend to move towards?
I can tell you, and Secretary Blinken just came from the region, that we have been talking to them intensely about a transition to low-intensity operations. We believe it's the right time for that transition, and we're talking to them about doing that. Now, they have done some precursory steps to try to kind of get to that point. They're pulling some troops out. They're relying a little less on airstrikes, but we believe that, look, any military campaign, you go through phases. And the next logical phase here, as they have put pressure on Hamas leadership, is to get to lower-intensity operations, more targeted, more precise raids. Less airstrikes. We believe it's time to make that transition, and we have had that conversation with them.
Time to make that transition because it's now a detriment to U.S. national security to be giving them cover for this long?
Because it's the right thing to do in this military campaign against Hamas. They have put pressure on leadership. They have gone after that leadership. They have been able to go after some of the resourcing and infrastructure that Hamas uses to conduct these attacks. We're not saying let your foot up off the gas completely and don't keep going after Hamas. It's still a viable threat. They have every right and responsibility to go after that. It's just that we believe the time is coming here very, very soon for a transition to this lower intensity phase.
Right.
The question was, should we be doing more to pressure them, not
right.
be descriptive?
I mean, all the other stuff is just, it's, but simultaneously, somebody's going to Axios. And this is the what they're trying to project. And it's unclear who this is for, because this is not nearly enough for people who care about the issue. And I don't know if they're trying to signal to the Israelis or they're trying to signal to the senators who are starting to say, like, we're going to condition aid, or we're not going to do aid whatsoever. Axios, President Biden and other senior U.S. officials are becoming increasingly frustrated with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his rejection of most of the administration's recent requests related to the war in Gaza. 4 U.S. officials with direct knowledge of the issue told Axios. Situation sucks and we're stuck. The president's patience is running out, one said. At every juncture, Netanyahu has given Biden the finger. This is Chris Van Hollen told Axios. He's a senator from Maryland. They're pleading with the Netanyahu coalition, but getting slapped in the face over and over again, as if there is no leverage here. Or as if they have tried, they've run out of things to do.
Also, like, Bibi's been giving the party the finger since before I had this job. Like, Netanyahu coming to talk to Congress because the Republicans wanted him there. Like, yeah, this is what they do. That finger's been extended for a decade.
It really is. This is either, and they're not mutually exclusive. This is both a twisted ideological stance by the administration and an abject failure of exerting U.S. soft power. There's just no way. This is just a failure. Biden hasn't spoken to Netanyahu in 20 days since a December 23rd call in which a frustrated Biden ended with the words, "This conversation is over." And Netanyahu, I imagine, was like, okay, just send the money. Before Biden hung up, Netanyahu had rejected his request that Israel release the Palestinian tax revenues it's withholding. It's Smotrach that is holding those. Same guy who basically says we're going to have all these people self-deport. Biden and his advisors, in addition to the tax revenue, believe Israel isn't doing enough to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. They're also frustrated by Netanyahu's unwillingness to seriously discuss plans for the day after the war and his rejection of the U.S. plan for reform Palestinian Authority. U.S. officials are now growing increasingly concerned that Israel won't meet its timetable to transition And if Israel doesn't significantly scale down its operations in Gaza, there's no timeline here, it will likely become increasingly difficult for Biden to maintain the same level of support for Israel's military campaign. Like, who is this for? Like, what is the fear that the Biden administration has in tiptoeing around? I mean, and I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt that that's what it is, as opposed to just their ideological relentlessness. But like either they recognize the political cost and the cost of basically the U.S. national security interests, or they don't. And if they do, then why are they tiptoeing around like this? And if they don't, why bother leaking this stuff to Axios? It's just so poorly done. And again, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. It's just so poorly done on both sides. And meanwhile, 3 UN agency chiefs yesterday, death toll now over 24,000. This is as reported by the AP in Gaza. It is undoubtedly higher than that. There's just no means in which to. Even Cindy McCain, for God's sakes. Cindy McCain, married to bomb Iran, John McCain. People in Gaza risk dying of hunger just miles from trucks filled with food. Every hour lost puts countless lives at risk. Is it the same Cindy McCain? Can you look that up? WFP Executive Director Cindy McCain?
That's her, yep.
I mean, the intensity of the bloodlust in that family. And she's saying this is just insane. That's the World Food Program, UNICEF, and the World Health Organization say more trucks need to be allowed in each day. New entry routes need to be opened up to Gaza. Aid workers and those seeking aid must be allowed to move around safely. This is not like this is not. They're not mentioning Israel by name, but the sort of unspoken handle on each one of these needs and requests is Israel needs to allow more trucks in each day. Israel needs to allow for new entry routes to be opened in Gaza. Israel needs to let aid workers and those seeking aid be allowed to move around safely. And it is Israel who's preventing all of this. This is a war crime. It's a war crime. There are images of kids having amputations a mile from a hospital that's either being destroyed or under assault from Israel.
This is video from Rami Abdul, who's with the Med Monitor, European Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor of the Gaza beach. Starvation has reached unprecedented levels. Thousands in western Gaza City rushed out upon hearing of a food truck's arrival, only to be fired upon by the Israeli army. I mean, the scale of horror.
It's just unbelievable. And you have even a former head of Shin Bet saying there's no Israel is getting no advantage of this. It's just pure bloodlust. Pure bloodlust. It really is just horrible.
At least John Kirby said there's been precursory steps taken, so good for that.
Here is, and one of the other things, we're up about 109, 110,000 109, 110 journalists killed in Gaza. I don't know how many more of their families. This guy, Wael al-Dadua, I may be mispronouncing his name. He was on with Ayman Molinari. And he's lost multiple kids, I think it is now, to Israeli bombing. They've been undoubtedly targeting this guy. He still goes on. Here he is on...
he lost his 15-year-old son, 7-year-old daughter, and grandson in airstrikes. That was updated 2 days ago.
Here he is on the Ayman show on MSNBC. This is Saturday.
Unfortunately, we feel that there is some degree of solidarity, support, and help. But from our point of view, at least, and because it's us who are paying this painful price, we do not feel that support is enough, is sufficient, or amounts to the level of the high cost we are paying. I told you a little while ago that 106 Palestinian journalists have become martyrs as a result of Israeli attacks in less than 3 months. This is frightening and has never happened in other wars, which lasted 20 years, maybe according to my knowledge. Yet what happened vis-a-vis those events? Maybe a statement here, a statement there, some efforts, nothing more. This pains us, actually. Many Palestinian journalists feel that they were let down, left alone to face this massacre and this carnage. And the world did not look at the bigger picture, did not really stand by us as we would have liked. We feel that we are being killed twice, once by the bombs and once by this silence, this shy way of expressing support.
Just horrific. And it's very hard to believe that this is all just sort of coincidental, that they just coincidentally hit all of these journalists. Remember, the Israeli government has already claimed that they have tens of thousands of phone numbers and geolocations, and that they're able to send voicemails and text messages to people living in specific areas, down to the household. You need to get out. You need to get out of the building. You need to get out of this. The idea that they have this technology, but it's just a coincidence that this many reporters have died. I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
I mean, I talked with Nando Villa, who did a podcast documentary on the Pegasus Project and the NSO Group, which were specifically journalists spying technology and exports by Israel. So.
I just wanted to call in and kind of ask about, my parents are super pro-Israel. I am not, and I've just kind of been struggling to kind of get through to them. Some background is they escaped the USSR, and they're very indoctrinated.
Oh boy, forget about it. Forget about it. Forget about it. Russian emigres, forget about it, my man. It's amazing that you, even as a second generation, that's really the thing that surprises me about this phone call, frankly.
I mean, I definitely fell into it. I used to watch Gavin McInnes and all that crap. So, but yeah, I mean, I got out of it. But it's just really hard. And I know this is a played out question, but how do you get through to a person who can discount media that disagrees with them, finds good talking points, quote unquote, to dismiss war crimes, and is married to the idea that letting Gazans into Israel will be the end of Jews, and they struggle humanizing Gazans, and yeah, I just don't know. And they're not crazy I mean, it's crazy to support Israel, but they're kind of the epitome of a centrist. They're pro-abortion and gay marriage, but anti-free college and healthcare. So it's that's the only reason why I feel there's some wiggle room there. I was able to convince them about the whole thing of oh, it's, it can't be a genocide if the population of Gazans increases. But yeah, I got through to them with that, so that's the only reason I feel there's some leeway here, but it's been a struggle.
Well, I mean, the tact I would take I don't know. It depends on what you want to convince them of, right? Because the tact I would take for a long time with people like that was your unfettered support for Israel is the greatest threat to Israel's existence, right? I would just sort of take that's what they care about. Israel's existence, regardless, whatever it takes, that's what their attitude is. And so I would say to people like that over the past, 10, 15 years, like your unfettered support for Israel is going to doom the country because they're going to do something, frankly, like this, and they're going to become pariahs. And it is going to be untenable for, at the very least, like a Democratic candidate to support them. Now, Joe Biden is, I guarantee you, I don't know if Joe Biden will win re-election. And I think if he doesn't, this is going to play a big part in it. It's going to be close regardless. But Joe Biden's the last Democratic president who's going to support Israel this way. That 100% guaranteed. It's just the politics within the Democratic Party are just changing. And so Israel is going to become increasingly isolated. That's one tact to sort of like take their premise that, Israel has an existential threat and that this is just basically politics. But then I would also like turn to like people like Ehud Olmert and this guy, Amy Ayalon, who is the former Shin Bet head, and just use them because they have a better sense of this stuff than your parents do. And, these are people who were there like with Ben Gurion, and so, you just sort of like drop it in and let it sort of fester. That's the only way. You can't like sort of like head on with them because the hair on their back will stand up and they just will get into a very defensive posture. This is a long-term project for you. And frankly, in all honesty, there's a story about 15% of the settlers in the West Bank are American, and they have oversized influence amongst, and they are the most rabid of the settlers. But I would say coming in at a close second would be Russian emigres. And if you look at guys like Avigdor Lieberman and, who was the first sort of like wave of right-wing fasci Israeli officials that were sort of like open about it, I'm quite convinced that, people who escaped the Soviet Union to emigrate to Israel became some of the most ardent and, look, they've grown up in a society where people are trained to be authoritarian. Not necessarily authoritarian leaders, but authoritarian followers. And I think there's like, it's just, I think that is, in my mind, one of the most underreported stories about that. But I have not, you are the most progressive child of a Russian immigrant. Never mind, I'm a Russian immigrant, forget it. But a Russian immigrant that I have met on this topic. I don't know what it is. Yeah. But I have my suspicions, but good luck. Long-term project.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Hang in there.
All right.
Thanks for the call.
All right. Thanks. Left is best.
As soon as you said parents of Russian immigrant, I don't know what to tell you. People who I know come from that background, progressive on everything. I mean, which is not to say, like, I also know, American Jews who've been in this country forever and they have the same attitude. But Russian immigrants, no wavering.